Is he like a weirdo though? Mm-hmm.
Which is why he serves in the movie well. All right. So we're gonna talk about what we call price controls, and that's a broader umbrella under two different. So there are two different types of price controls, but the first one we're going to deal with are price ceilings. So let me kind of talk about what price controls are in general. Price controls are either they're government imposed. Sometimes you have companies that will impose them on themselves, but they're set prices. Now that might sound kind of weird because you're like, well, isn't like what we've been learning all set prices? Remember, the prices can fluctuate in the situations we've been talking about. So we're talking about free markets. Prices can fluctuate. So if demand increases, price will increase, right? And so will quantity produced, the overall output produced. So if the iPhone gets really popular, the iPhone 10 gets really popular, okay, that's going to increase the price, okay, it can. And if you're like, well, Apple sets that price. If you want to really see the free market work, go on to like eBay or another third-party site and see what people are selling the Apple 10 for. Okay? And you'll see that prices have increased because demand is increasing. There's a shortage. Apple's fixing that. But it's probably easier to talk in the negative or in the like prices go down sense. People are more apt to buy like the new iPhone, either the 7 or the 8. As the 8, they start working out the kinks, which they've started to really do. Demand for the Apple 7 or the iPhone 7 will decrease, and the price will decrease on it. Okay, it's just the same as like Christmas stuff. Okay, after Christmas, you know that all the Christmas stuff goes on sale, and then Hobby Lobby will put it out like after the 2nd of January because they have their Christmas stuff. It seems like out all year. So, but you guys know that demand decreases and price will decrease. All right, so we're talking about that kind of stuff happening with price controls. The laws of supply and demand are suspended either legally or, like I said, a company will impose that on themselves. We'll talk about situations where companies can do that, but companies have to have really strong influences on the market itself. Like they've got to be a monopoly, or they have to be in agreement, we call it collusion, with other companies to do this kind of stuff. Okay, so price controls essentially suspend kind of that idea that demand and supply, the laws of demand and supply will shift prices and that instead they're set. Okay, so we're going to start with the price ceilings first. All right, my New York City apartment has now gone off the reservation here. It's like it's zoomed in 1,000 times. Let's see if exiting this works. All right, so you got a situation, there we go. You got a situation in New York City. Okay, we'll start with New York City. We're talking about a fair market price, so this is supply and demand law rules are totally in effect. Okay, and so the fair market price of a small apartment in New York City, let's just say it's $1,600. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. They've done studies, and I'm sure I can look it up and update the PowerPoint, but I'm not going to do that. So the market clearing price, the equilibrium price is $1,600. And you're talking about an apartment smaller than this room. Okay, it has a door. It doesn't have any separate rooms. You might have an oven and a stovetop and maybe a bathroom in the small studio apartment, but that's it. Okay, $1,600 is the fair market value. Okay, if the people of New York just let it go, that's what you'd be renting an apartment for. Okay, but New York City has what they call rent control. How many of you have watched Friends? Well, more than most classes. Excellent. Okay, you're going to see a clip tomorrow where I spliced together. There are two prominent times in Friends that they talk about price controls. One is relatively quick. It's when Joey and Monica first meet. They talk about price controls or rent control, and hilarity ensues, and you'll see the clip. Then there's the second episode that's almost focused, most of the episode is focused around the idea of price controls, and it's when Ross is trying to get the apartment across the street from Monica's apartment, and an ugly naked guy is renting it out. And again, you'll watch the clip. It's real quick. I spliced together just that part of the episode. But there are 2 episodes specifically. There's another one where the guy below, Mr. I forgot what his name is, dies, and he like is the guy that hits the broom when they're being too loud. They talk about it a little bit in there. But those other 2 episodes, if you've watched Friends, one of those episodes is super prominent. It's the one where Ross is trying to get that apartment. But they talk about it. If you watch How I Met Your Mother, they talk about rent control there. If you ever watch Law and Order and somebody dies in a rent-controlled building, they always investigate the landlord first. And so these rent controls in New York City are relatively prominent. Now, rent control is a type of price control. In other words, they're saying that a price for an apartment cannot be legally above this price. And so where would you think a price ceiling would be set? Okay, high, right? As far as on the graph, sorry. High, right? Because the price ceiling, right? Ceiling on top. It's set below equilibrium price because it's based on not where it is in the graph, but based on the definition. Okay, and if you can see in the upper right-hand corner, it says price ceilings are set below equilibrium price. It's a ceiling. It's the highest price that can be offered. Now, what you see right there, and I want to make sure that you put it in your notes, is an effective price ceiling. Effective price ceiling. That is it's hard to not say and not to make it sound like un. All right, it's an effective price ceiling. In other words, it's working. It's set where it's supposed to be. Okay, effective price ceilings are set below equilibrium. Effective price ceilings are set below equilibrium. The reason why I tell you this, and I want to make sure you have it down, is because on your test, there might be a question or 2 that says, that shows you a price ceiling that's set at equilibrium, so where price is, or higher, and it'll say what, it'll go on the question, what price is being charged. If it's set at equilibrium or higher, it's an ineffective price ceiling. Ineffective, meaning it's set at equilibrium or higher. Meaning it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Okay, again, you guys know the definition, the term for ineffective, it just means that it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Ineffective price ceilings are set at equilibrium or higher, meaning they're not doing what they're supposed to. Effective price ceilings are set below market equilibrium. And again, it goes based on the definition, not where it's at on the graph. Now, I'll give you a way that I remembered this when I was learning it, because it can get confusing. You might kind of understand it now, but when you get to the test, I understand that like sometimes wires get crossed and stuff like this, but I'll try to give you an easy way of remembering ceilings and floors. So price ceilings are set below market equilibrium. The definition of a price ceiling is that it's the highest price that can be charged in the market. Highest price that can be charged in the market. So in this case, this is a government price control. The city council gets together, they talk, and they say, you know what, rent is pretty high in New York City, especially for a small, a little bit smaller than classroom size apartment studio. It's $1,600. Here in Colorado, it's a small house mortgage payment, but it's not, it's still a house. If you pay $1,600 here in Colorado for an apartment, you've probably got a pretty big apartment with multiple rooms in it. Okay, the one we're talking about in New York City has no multiple rooms. It has a stovetop and maybe a bathroom. Okay, so you're talking about a very small apartment. And there are rent controls on bigger apartments. It's just the prices. The rent control, the price ceiling is higher on those bigger apartments. All right, so the New York City Council gets together and says, wow, rent's really high. Let's do something to keep it low. Right? They can be altruistic in their motives and saying, we're doing this for our constituents. Or, if you're more of a negative type, it can be a negative type of thing where they're just simply trying to get elected, and I'll give you my pessimistic view of politicians here in just a minute. So, the fair market price is $1,600. The price ceiling is set below that. Now, why is it set below that? Okay, and again, you don't need to write this down. This just kind of answers that question. Okay, remember, what's a politician's #1 job? Okay, if you think like it's to represent the people, that's nice, but that's not true. It's to get elected. Okay, the number one job is to get reelected. Okay, so there you go. Get reelected. That's a politician's job, is to get reelected. The best way to do so is by saying, you know what, the price of something is really high. Let's make sure that the price never goes above a certain level. And especially in a place like New York City where the cost of living is extremely expensive. It's the biggest city in the United States. By far, it's the biggest city. The second biggest city is Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston. Okay, those are big areas. But if you want to live within the city of New York, real estate is at a premium. Okay, so they can't build buildings. They can't just randomly build buildings. They have to either wreck them and build them higher, or they need to charge higher prices for it. So politicians say, the price is too high, we're going to put a price ceiling, a rent control on. Okay, you can even make a political party based on this in New York. I introduced you to the Rent is Too Damn High party. He ran for mayor of New York City. He got second in the mayor of New York City voting. I'm sorry, he got third. The independent won, Bloomberg won, the Democrat came in second, he came in third. Okay, and his whole platform, guess what his whole platform is based on? The rent being too high. Okay, and that was all he talked about.
Can we listen to wonderful speeches?
Yeah, I'll play one of his speeches a little bit later, or you can YouTube him. All right, so he's hilarious. He's super energetic. He's a likable guy. He's really funny when he talks. All right, but he got third in the mayoral races in New York City. Why? Because the rent's high. Too damn high, according to him. All right, so you have a situation where rents are really high. So the government comes in and says, we're going to make sure your rent doesn't go above a certain level. Hence, they put a price ceiling. The price ceiling is set at $1,200. Okay? Meaning it's below market equilibrium, meaning that it's an effective price ceiling. It's effective in that it's set below market equilibrium price. So if you're given on the test like a table, and it says I don't know, 1,000 apartments can rent at $500, 2,000 apartments can rent at $1,200 or something like that, where would you set the price ceiling? You'd set it below market equilibrium. Okay, you set it lower than what market equilibrium is. All right, so they can't legally charge above $1,200 for a small studio apartment. Okay, when you have a situation like that, when you have a situation where price is set artificially below market equilibrium, on the graph, look on the graph, let the graph be your guide, okay? What happens when the price is set below market equilibrium? In other words, are there more or less consumers that want the good when price is set at below market equilibrium? Okay, there's higher quantity demanded, right? Higher quantity demanded because the price is set low, and that's where the solid line hits the quantity demanded. Okay, what about number of apartments? Okay, the quantity supplied is lower, right? Because in that case, then, there really isn't an incentive for a development company to build more small apartments because they can't rent them at that higher price. So there's less of an incentive, and again, it's not all about profit. Maybe they can't cover their costs based on that, so they'd be losing money. So you have a situation where your quantity demanded is greater than your quantity supplied. Your quantity demanded is greater than your quantity supplied when there's an effective price ceiling. So you've got a situation where quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied, an effective price ceiling. What happens if more people want something than there is of that thing to have? What happens? Starts with an S. Rhymes with shortage. Shortage happens, okay? Again, this is an example of what's happening with the iPhone. And again, Apple sets their prices. Shortage is happening because more people want it than there are phones available. Now, eventually, Apple will resolve that. They always do. But at this time, if you want an iPhone 10, you can either go to the store and pre-order it, and it'll come to you at some point when they produce more. Not pre-order it because it's out now. But you can order it, and it'll come to you when they get more. Or you can go on eBay or somewhere else and pay a higher price for it. But when there are more people that want it than there are that it's being produced, you always have a situation of shortage. That one, sometimes Apple kind of self-imposes that on themselves, knowing that'll get like more hype. But in this case, this isn't imposed because it is self-imposed, sorry, but it's not going to be solved. That's the issue here. Okay, there's going to be a shortage in the market, and there will continue to be a shortage as long as there's a price control, because there isn't an incentive for development companies to build more housing. Okay, they can't charge the market clearing price. But there is an incentive for people to move to New York because the rents are lower. Okay, now a $1,200 rent here in Colorado will get you a smaller apartment with fewer rooms. Okay, in New York, it'll get you a studio apartment, but you're not paying $1,600 for it. All right, so you have a shortage in the market. You'll never be asked to find the area of shortage, but in case you were wondering, it's that square. AP, you are required to do that, but not in here. All right, so just to, again, drive home the point. Quantity supplied is the number of landlords that will offer apartments at that lower price. Your quantity demand is the number of people who want the apartments at that lower price. All right, so you have a situation here where more people want it than there are of it available to have. Okay, in this case, it's apartments. So you have a situation like that. Okay, now, if you were an enterprising person, which most of you are, if you have a situation where you've got a shortage and you're in an apartment that you only paid $1,200, let's say you were going to move out. Would you just move out and be like, here you go, landlord? What might it benefit you to do? It's the same thing as if you bought an iPhone 10, you're going to turn around and sell it on eBay. Oh, you're talking about subletting it, okay? You rent it out yourself. Are you going to charge the $1,200 that you're getting charged, or are you going to charge higher because you know that more people want it than there are available? You're going to charge a higher price. Okay, that's called subletting. It's illegal in New York. People still do it all the time. Okay, so there are going to be three consequences to price ceilings. One being that there's a shortage. You already wrote down one. Okay, as long as it's an effective price ceiling, you're going to have a situation of shortage. So that's one consequence of a price ceiling, is a shortage. The second consequence of a price ceiling is there are going to be black markets that pop up. Now, unless you watch Family Guy, hopefully you know that a black market isn't somewhere you can go. There's one episode where they go to the black market and they buy like bazookas and stuff like that. Okay, so a black market ensues. In other words, just like some of you guys said, there's more of the something than there is of the something to have. Therefore, then, you're going to upcharge the price and just sell on your own. Okay, it's illegal in New York City to sublet apartments, but people do it all the time. Okay, those black markets ensue. I equate econ, if I haven't done this before, I think I've given you this visual. Economics, because people's self-interest, is like a river. Okay, it flows naturally. If you put like a big rock in the middle of that river, all you're going to do is just make it so that people have to go around that. And that's what a price control is. Okay, and most regulations are that too, that people will go around it. Or it could be North Korea and just dam up the river and then you cause all types of problems. All right, so this is the situation where you're putting a rock in the middle of kind of the free-flowing river of econ. Okay, people go around it, and that's a black market. People sublet their apartments all the time. That Friends episode I was telling you about where Ross is trying to get the apartment, if you remember the episode, he tries to bribe the guy, okay, because he's renting it, the ugly naked guy's renting it on his own. So he tries to bribe the guy, and there's mini muffins, and he ends up giving like the most lame present ever. So he ends up going over there and hangs out naked with the ugly naked guy. And it not give you the wrong impression. I'll show the video clip tomorrow. But that like gets him the apartment, and that happens all the time. Either family members sublet it, or people get kickbacks because of it, but it's illegal to do. The third consequence is bias. Bias in the market. Bias in the market. Bias in the market. All right, bias in the market. Because I'm a landlord and I have something I know that a lot of other people want, I hold a lot of the chips. And who gets it? So I have an apartment that comes up that now can be rented out. I know there are thousands of applications because people can't get small apartments. And I start thumbing through the applications. Okay, now I'm deciding instead of the market deciding. If the market decided, I just jack up the price until the last person who wanted it stayed in the running for it. Okay, and I call them references and stuff like that. Here, I can decide however I want to decide. Okay, maybe I decide that only like super educated people can be there. Maybe I'm single, which I'm not. Maybe I'm single and I fill it with attractive young women. Okay, maybe I decide that certain races or genders or whatever can't live there. Okay, that allows bias to ensue. If you just allow this to happen, it's just going to be the person who's willing and able to pay for it. But if you let price control happen, bias enters the market. Bad things happen because of that. All right, again, why might people do that? I'm going to run you through a situation where another price control happens. Why might people do that? Well, because again, it's all for votes. I can go to the people of New York City and say, I've kept your apartment rents artificially low. People are going to be like, yeah, you kept the prices down. But not realizing that people don't have apartments because I've kept the prices down because of a shortage.
So it's really not beneficial for the price.
Yeah, it's only beneficial if you want to keep the price artificially low, but you're creating a shortage. All right, maybe that's part of what you want to do. Maybe that's the consequence. That's okay. If the trade-off to society is, hey, we're going to artificially create shortages in order to keep the prices low, maybe that's a goal, and that's okay. But you got to understand there are negative consequences to that. Most people don't understand that. All right, so let's talk about what we call price gouging. Is up there. I'm going to run you through another situation where price ceilings happen. I don't want you to just think it happens in New York City. It doesn't. All right, so let's pretend for a second I'm sitting at home and I actually stay up late enough to watch the news. And I'm sitting at home watching the news and a news flash comes on and says a major hurricane about to hit Houston. Okay, that shouldn't be all that far for you guys to understand since that just basically happened. Okay, so a big hurricane's about to smack into the 4th largest city in the United States. All right, I'm an enterprising person, as you've learned from my how I made a lot of money in demand little lesson there. And so I get an idea. Okay, I know that in Houston, okay, once the hurricane hits, people are going to be out of power. And some people are going to be out of power for a long time. I think we tend to think once the news coverage stops, things just happen to be normal back in Houston. You guys know that that's not the case. Okay, there's still people without power in Houston. There's still streets that are flooded there. There's still hardship there. Some of you are going on discovery trips to Houston in order to help out, and that's not until the spring. So hopefully you guys understand that that devastation continues past when it ends in the news cycle. So I see that happening. And I know that people are going to need electricity. Okay, so I decide I'm going to go to U-Haul and rent the biggest U-Haul truck I can. I'm going to fill it with generators. So every Home Depot and Lowe's I hit between here and Amarillo, I'm just going to buy as many generators as I can. And let's say that generator right there is about $800. So I'm going to spend 800 bucks a piece. So I get the loan that I got to make all this money and knowing demand, and I'm going to go ahead and buy those all up, fill my U-Haul truck. I have a brother-in-law that lives in Austin. I'm going to park my U-Haul truck in Austin until the storm goes by, until the hurricane goes by. And then once they start letting people back into Houston, I'm going to be the first one in there with my U-Haul truck filled with generators. And I'm going to drive my U-Haul truck into the center of Houston. I'm going to open it up, put a little tent awning so I don't get rained on because it's still raining. All right, I don't get rained on. I'm going to have Mr. Blasty on full display in case somebody tries to come and take one of my generators without me selling it to them. And I'm going to put a sign up that says generators for sale at the low price of $1,500. I paid $800 for them. Okay, but I'm going to set up my little shop right there and sell generators for $1,500. Or maybe you think I'm a horrible human being for taking advantage of people during a time of disaster. It's okay to admit that. Man, the other class is a lot more fun. Like half of them thought I was a horrible human being. All right, but that's pretty bad, right? I'm jacking up the price on something that I know people need and want during a time of a disaster. If you in your head were too afraid to raise your hand, you in your head thought like, that's pretty bad. Like even for you, that's pretty nasty. I understand you're economists and all that, but really? The Texas state government agrees with you. I couldn't do that. Matter of fact, I'd be thrown in jail and fined for doing that. Okay, it's what we call price gouging. It's taking advantage of people during a time of disaster by unreasonably setting a high price on a good that they need. So I'm going to run through that definition again. It's taking advantage of people during a time of disaster by charging people a higher price on a good that they need. Now, who am I going to be selling these generators to? People of Houston. All right. More specifically, people without power. So, knowing that those are givens, who's going to buy a generator for $1,500? People who want it, but people who really need it, right? It's probably not like if you're just going to buy a generator in order to keep your cell phone charged so you can keep your Instagram streak alive, or if you're going to buy it so that you can run your Xbox and your TV on it so that you can continue your kill streak during, Call of Duty or something like that, you're probably not going to buy a generator for $1,500. You're probably like, oh, that's expensive. I mean, unless you're really in desperate need to do that. Instead, it's going to be people who desperately need that in order to keep medication safe from getting too hot and going bad. Okay, you're probably not going to buy one if you've killed a deer 2 years ago and you just don't want your garage to smell because of the meat rots. You're probably going to want it if you really need it. So I'm offering a good to people who really need it. Incidentally, like many things, if I've thought about it in 2 minutes of thinking about it, other people have thought about it. And so let's say you, let's say in a couple of years, a hurricane's going to hit New Orleans. And you're like, I remember that lecture where he was going to jack up the prices on generators. He was an awful human being, but I need money. So I'm going to go ahead and sell my soul for that. So you do the same exact thing I do. You rent a U-Haul truck, you buy out the generators that you can, you go down to Louisiana, you set up shop right next to me. But because you see this price and you're like, I'll show him. I hated Econ. I'm going to show him even though you're using Econ. And you set your generators for $1,000. People are going to buy your generators or my generators that are now set at, $1,500? They're going to go for the cheaper one, right? What's that going to force me to do? Lower my prices. So now what that's done is, so if you think I'm a horrible human being, think of this. One, I'm offering a service to people who really need it. Two, it's going to incentivize other people to do what I'm doing, okay, which is taking resources. Do we need generators here in Colorado? Not really. I mean, unless there's a huge snowstorm. You don't really need it, right? So I'm taking resources that aren't needed here in Colorado and taking it to a place that really needs it. And 3, it incentivizes other people to do the, or I said it incentivizes other people to do the same thing. It also incentivizes them to lower their prices, okay, which means that I'm going to have to be forced to lower my prices. So in the end, it allows for competition. However, I would never do this. Not because I'm some altruistic, like, I would never overcharge, because it's illegal for me to do it. And my generators would be seized. It's illegal for you to do it too. Okay, and if you can't charge a higher price, there's a certain percentage I think they've got worked out. But there's no incentive for me to do that. So it's going to cause a shortage. Okay, people who need it don't get it because it's illegal for us to go and do this. But it's a price ceiling. They say you can't charge above this price during a time of disaster. Why do they do that? For votes. It also happens in times where monopolies, all right, or companies can control a certain price. So I need to update this slide. I think some of you know who Garth Brooks is. I should probably put Taylor Swift or something else like that. How many of you have been to a sold-out either concert or sporting event? If you haven't, it's a sight to be seen. And you maybe should get out more often. All right, but if you do, right, did any of you buy the tickets third party? Or your parents bought the tickets third party? Okay, did you charge, or did they charge you more or less?
Kind of, I got a season ticket through this camp that I went to
Okay.
go see John Williams perform.
Oh, sweet.
And
So,
I don't know exactly how that would go.
okay, so let's say that you buy it, you don't buy it through Ticketmaster, you buy it through some third party. Let's say you buy it on eBay. Price going to be higher or lower?
Higher.
Higher, right? All right, so why don't concert promoters then charge that higher price if they know, especially if it's a really popular artist, if they know they can, set prices higher, why not set prices higher? Why doesn't, the reason why I don't like the Broncos is the fans here drive me crazy. Now that they're not doing well, everybody's like, oh, they're blah, 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 and then they just jump off the bandwagon. All right, I was a Cubs fan for a long time. They were terrible. I'm a Bears fan. They're awful. Like, they're terrible. But I'll still root for them. I'd still go to their games if I could. Okay, so the fans here drive me nuts. So everybody jumps off the bandwagon. But assuming the Broncos get better here quickly, which they probably will, okay, and they make the playoffs, can the Broncos as an organization jack up the prices on playoff tickets?
No.
Could they? Yeah, they could. They could. They don't. Why? Because when ABC pans out and you see the stadium is jam-packed full of people, that's good for the Broncos. Do you think Garth Brooks or Taylor Swift wants to walk out? They make the same amount of money, but they walk out and the stadium or the concert venue is half full? No, they want to see it packed. So they set the prices low and cause a shortage artificially. Okay, the reason being is they want to see it packed. Now again, they don't make their money mainly off of concerts, they make their money off of merchandise and all that other kind of stuff. But it's still, if they could earn the same amount of money and perform to a half-packed audience, they're not going to want to do that. They're going to want to do it jam-packed. That's also the reason why if the Rockies get bad again, you won't see ushers checking tickets. If you're going to go down after the third inning, you're going to go down and sit close to the dugouts and stuff like that. They want people in those seats. Because again, when they show Nolan Arenado, they want people behind it and not empty seats. So they'll lower the prices, or they'll stop essentially enforcing the fact that you can't go down in those lower, nicer seats. Because they want it for TV coverage. Okay, it looks better. But why do concert venues and that set artificial price floors? Why do they make it so that the ticket prices don't fluctuate? Because they want them sold out. Okay, so companies that have monopolies, the Broncos have a monopoly on their ticket prices. They get to decide. They're not competing with another Denver Broncos team. Garth Brooks or Taylor Swift has a monopoly on what they can set their prices at, because they're not competing with themselves in some other concert venue that can lower the price. So they'll artificially set a price ceiling. Okay, the second type of price floor, or second type of price control is a price floor. And we're simply only going to start this. We'll finish it. It'll probably take me about 10 minutes tomorrow to finish. And then the rest of the time you're going to have to work on the other stuff. So price floor is another type of price control. These are very rare to see. They're more rare than price ceilings are. So rare that we have to go back to before anybody in this room was alive. 1975. I think Fraser was like 630 years old at this time. Okay, so back in 1975, a flight between Chicago and Minneapolis would cost about $169. You can't see that because it's white. But a flight from Los Angeles to San Francisco would cost $69. Now, why might that be? Okay, state versus other state. What might be some other reasons? What's up? Okay, good. So that maybe there's number of flights, right? The number of flights going between these two would be more between Los Angeles and San Francisco than between Chicago and Minneapolis. That's a good guess. Maybe more people want to go between Chicago and Minneapolis than San Francisco and Los Angeles. Okay, those are all reasons why that might be. I'll give you the reason why, and Cole, you were right. All right, one's what we call interstate, meaning between states, and one's what we call intrastate. Now, I don't know how many of you have had government, but for those of you that haven't, okay, interstate commerce, things that happen between states, Congress is allowed to regulate. That's Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, gives Congress the ability to regulate interstate commerce. Okay, commerce are essentially like business transactions that happen between states. That was a way to address problems in the Articles of Confederation because states would just get angry at each other and just put unreal tariffs. Congress is allowed to regulate that. They're not, the federal government is not allowed to regulate intrastate commerce. There's a reason things that happen within the state. There's a reason Congress can say, bad Colorado, don't legalize marijuana, and we can still get away with it. Okay, because that happens within the state. But if Colorado wanted to, I don't know, Colorado's getting sued in federal court because what they're saying is people from like Nebraska and Wyoming are buying marijuana here and taking it into Wyoming. Oh, that becomes a federal issue, interstate commerce. Okay, so anything interstate, Congress can regulate. Anything that happens within the state, that's all state governments that regulate it. So in 1975, Congress gave essentially power to what we call the Civil Aeronautics Board. You don't need to know that. In order to regulate flights that happen between states. The reason why they did that was because the airline company lobbied Congress and they said, hey, if you don't do this, a lot of airline companies are going to go out of business. They were actually pretty profound in their prediction because that's exactly what happens when this goes away. Okay, there are really only 3 major airline companies that operate within the United States right now. Because you might say, well, wait, there's like Frontier and Spirit Airlines and Southwest and Delta and American and all blah, blah, blah. They're all owned by the same basic companies. All right, so, but they said to protect the industry, to protect the airline industry, you need to set a price that people that travel between states have to pay. Okay, they set a price floor. Where do you think a price floor is going to be on the graph? Above, because the price ceiling was below, right? You'd be correct, but not for that reasoning. All right? You're correct because a price floor is the lowest price a company can charge for a good or service. A price floor is the lowest price a company can charge for the good or service. It's the lowest price a company can charge for a good or service. So here's a few ways to remember that a floor is above and a ceiling is below, because that's kind of confusing. The way that I remembered it when I was learning this was economics is really confusing and weird, and ceilings are below and floors are above. That's honestly how I remembered it. That econ's all messed up, and floors are above and ceilings are below. That's how I remembered it. Mr. Wood says a floor, you like bounce a basketball on the floor, right, in order to dribble it. And so that's the lowest that you can dribble the basketball. So it's above. He says that ceilings, right, the highest that you can go on a ceiling, the highest point you can go is a ceiling. So it's like letting a balloon. And you're always trying to get to this middle equilibrium. So you can't bounce the basketball to that equilibrium because the floor is stopping you. And a balloon, a helium-filled balloon, can't rise to the equilibrium because of the ceiling. Okay, that's how he explained it. I don't know what works. Or you just simply know the definitions. A ceiling is the highest price, so it has to be set below. A floor is the lowest price, so it has to be set above. Whatever works for you guys. All right, so like I said, it's the lowest price that can be charged by law. A price floor is. So again, the airline industry lobbied Congress and said, hey, we'll go out of business if you don't set a price that's above equilibrium. Again, that's an effective price floor. It's set above. Okay, effective means that it's working the way it should. It's set above. If it's ineffective, it's going to be set at equilibrium or below, which means it doesn't, it's just the market's going to determine the price, which means that's not effective. There's no real reason to have it in that case. All right, so do you remember which route had the price floor? The interstate one, the one between Chicago and Minneapolis, good. And the one that was actual the market equilibrium was the intrastate one, the one between San Francisco and Los Angeles. So with the same number of flights, same number of people on those flights, same distance, the flight should have cost $69. But because it was interstate, because it was between two states, Congress then said, nope, price floor, lowest you can charge is $169. Okay, this is the last thing I'll have you guys do, and then tomorrow we'll finish this up. Okay, whenever you have a situation where the quantity is supplied at that high price, it's going to benefit airlines to run more flights or have more seats available, right? Because you can sell, they can sell for a higher price. And they can't say, oh, we're going to lower our prices, because they can't legally. So it's going to benefit them to have more seats available at that high price. But people aren't going to want to buy not as many people are going to want to buy them at that high price, those seats. So what's a situation where you have more available than you have people that want that? Surplus, good job. You know that because you're smart. Okay, so price floors create a surplus. Again, most of you travel, most of you have been on an airplane probably relatively recent, so you all know that when you get on an airplane right now, okay, they're packed. They're jam-packed. So hopefully you know that price floors have gone bye-bye. So you get a situation where they always come over the loudspeaker, and you probably heard this before, they say, our flight is extremely full. We're going to ask you to check bags if you don't need them in the overhead bin. Or we're going to ask if some of you are willing to take, money, financial thing, and also like hotel and stuff like that if you can fly at a later time. If you ever buy a ticket, or you can look on your purchasing agreement, you have to click like I agree before you continue on. The thing you agree to, by the way, is that ticket is only basic, it only reserves your right to fly on the airline. It doesn't reserve your seat necessarily. So if you remember like back in the summer, the guy that got pulled off the United flight, he was actually in the wrong, although the way United did it was not okay. He was in the wrong because legally you agreed to the fact that you're only agreeing that that flight, if they don't ask you to leave, that you can be on that flight. But you're only guaranteed a spot on that airline. You're not actually guaranteed a seat. So they can actually do that. But they couldn't in the 1970s and 60s. Okay, we're going to end there. I will see you guys tomorrow. Make sure that you please bring your price control